Hi everyone, Kate Berkner here today with Dr. Tom Phelan, author and creator of 123 Magic, as well as the author of The Manager Mom Epidemic. Dr. Phelan, welcome.
Good morning, Kay.
We didn't see you last week. You were, I know, holding a virtual conference for pediatricians, child psychologists, other family counselors. So we had a guest who was Kelly Rippon. So it was nice to chat with her, but also wonderful to have you back.
Well, thank you.
So today what we're going to be talking about is parenting myths. So Dr. Phelan, can you start and sort of explain to us, what is a myth when it comes to parenting and how can they kind of cause trouble at home?
Yeah, myths cause trouble because largely they're, I don't want to say unconscious, but they're sort of unknown. We don't even know we have the myths. And the myths are based on a combination of hope and inexperience. So we have ideas about a wonderful family life and wonderful kids and wonderful marriage and all these kinds of things. And so we think that's what's going to happen to us because that's what we want. And we've never been through it before. So we don't have any idea about what could go wrong. So inevitably there are, and that's what we talk about these 8 myths, there are things that are going to give us a hard time. And we're not ready for them because we don't know that they are really there. And the way they cause trouble is by causing a big difference between the reality of our experience and our expectation. And one of the unfortunate things is when that happens, if we are married there, we have kids, and the reality is very different from the expectation, we're going to start looking for somebody to blame. And there's really, in the beginning, only 2 people. That's the mom or the dad. So somebody's going to get it.
Yeah, and some people may blame themselves for things, but I know that the strong human tendency is to look outside of ourselves for what is the problem here, what's causing this, which unfortunately in that situation means you're kind of turning on your partner.
Yeah, and imagine they're going through the same thing. So they're sort of turning on you, and now we got a bad situation.
Yeah. So can you tell us about, you talk about 8 different destructive parenting myths. We were just talking about how partners view each other. What is one of those myths that may impact how partners see each other or get along?
Well, one of them, and I don't know if you'd say it's the biggest one, but it's number 1 on the list, is a baby will bring us closer together. This is one of the fond hopes that people have had for as long as humans have been on the earth, I think. And so, and it's like you think about that, somebody's never had kids or whatever, they say a baby's going to bring it. Oh, isn't that lovely? We're so excited and all this kind of stuff. Well, I hate to sound like a curmudgeon, but the research is exactly the opposite. A baby will drive you farther apart, almost inevitably. People say, "I'm going to be the exception," and we're not going to go through that. But no, you're not. You're not going to be the exception. You have no idea what you're getting into, and it's going to cause a lot of aggravation.
Yeah, especially if you go into it thinking easy peasy, we're going to get closer because of this. It's just going to happen automatically rather than going into it with a mindset of this is going to be really hard. And if we want it to bring us closer together instead of pushing us further apart, we're actually going to have to pay attention to that and put a lot of work into it.
That's right, and you certainly have. That's why we have the program. You have to recognize that the myths are there. You have to get them out from under the table where you can't see them and bring them out into the light.
Absolutely. So we talked about one of the myths that, impacts how partners see each other. Talk to us about one or more of the myths that impact how parents see their children.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the first time obedience myth. And a lot of times we think of this as just associated with certain really almost fundamentalist religious groups. But I think it's part of any parent's brain that when I tell you to do something, you should do it. And you should do it the first time I tell you to do it, and not the third time I tell you to do it. And so the idea is that normal children are going to respond, "Yes, ma'am," and they're on their way, to do what you ask them to do. Well, of course, this is ridiculous. That's why we're laughing now because we both had kids. Kids don't respond like that, and kids have a hard time switching gears. That's one of in our expectations chapters. That's one of the chapter. That's one of the things that we point out about kids transitioning from one thing to another. It's very, very difficult. So they rarely do first time obedience, but it's still something. But then it frustrates us, and who do we get mad at? In this case, we get mad at the child.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like many of us as adults don't necessarily do first time obedience.
Oh, oh,
I know that especially when you have younger kids, that the little adult assumption that you talk about in the 1 2 3 Magic book really comes into play there, because as an adult you think, oh, I've explained to you, I've told you what you need to do. In some cases I've explained to you why you need to do it. Why aren't you doing it?
that's
Very
right. What
confused.
else do I have to do?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, you've talked before about a romantic view of parenting versus a realistic view of parenting. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, it's kind of like what we've just been talking about. Kids are tough, and you have a baby and you bring that baby home. Uh, maybe some people think it's an exciting time. I think it's a really hard time. And for a guy, you just lost your best friend, which is your wife, or the person having the baby, you just had a baby. It's like major surgery. You're tired, you're frustrated. Now the baby wants to eat in the middle of the night, and all this kind of thing. This isn't romantic. I don't think there's anything really fun about it. It may be fun showing the baby to mother-in-law or something like that, but it's tough, and it's really not what we expect. I mean, our expectations are partly created by our society and by media, for example. So you look at a magazine and you see so and so is about to have twins. She's a famous movie actress. She's so excited. Well, that kind of sets your expectation, and that's it's just plain wrong. It's not the way it works.
Absolutely. Well, and I know, for me, when I had my first child, right, people say things like, oh, as soon as you see your baby, you're going to immediately fall in love. And like the only thing I thought when I first saw my baby was, wow, that was really hard and you are really loud. And but I think that there is sort of this societal thing created about the way that moms are expected to react to their child, or parents are expected to feel about bringing a baby, and it's all supposed to be excitement.
Right.
And we don't necessarily hold space for trepidation or fear around that.
No, I think that's a good point because I think that applies to moms and dads. A lot of people feel like they see the baby and they don't feel that instant affection. They feel like they're bringing a doll home, a stranger, a doll, and all that. And I think maybe that's more typical with dads. But I know for me, I didn't feel a lot of bonding until the baby smiled at 2 months. Once they smile, then I'm in. Okay, I can do this. But before that, it's like, my goodness, what just happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as a parent, when you feel that way, there's part of your brain that's saying, what is wrong with you? Why don't you? So then you kind of like kick yourself into this very challenging spiral.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of the expectation. The expectation is I see the baby, immediate love, affection, and all that didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this conversation thus far has been around a lot of things that are a little maybe negative, very challenging.
Yeah,
Is there a positive side of things here?
yeah. I think the positive side, well, there is and there isn't. I mean, the negative side is that a lot of what we're talking about is the reason why we have a divorce rate that's so high, 40 or 50% of first marriages. And then it gets worse with second marriages and third marriages. I think the positive thing is if you can recognize the myths, but you got to recognize them early. What you want to do, the positive thing is to me, you want to have a parent focused family or parent focused marriage. That means focusing on mom and dad. You want to get back to when you were dating, the engine that was driving what was happening was your relationship. You were having fun, you felt love toward one another, and that was a powerful thing. That engine gets broken up by the kids in a lot of ways. And so I think to get the positive back, you got to go back to the engine. The engine's not the kids. They're not going to bring you closer together. What's going to bring you closer? It's got to be in the two of you. And so the positive is you have to get back that fun and affection. And it's obviously not an easy thing to do. Both people working, COVID these days. Um, what are we going to
Yes.
do? How are we going to do it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think there's also, again, there's like some societal pressure, and I hear it more around women and their relationship with their kids than I do around men and their relationship with their kids. But this sort of expectation that mom should put her children first above anyone.
Yeah.
That's sort of a, you've got that sort of like mama bear kind of perception that mom should always be kids first, when realistically you chose your partner as someone to walk through life with. And if you want that, like you said, if you want that relationship to remain good and to last, you have to continue choosing that person and choosing them first.
I think so. I think it's got to be marriage first, and that's old fashioned now. It's not, just like you said, it's not the way it is. I think a lot of the times it is kids first, and that's caused a lot of the trouble.
Yeah. So you talked about needing to recognize these myths, but you also mentioned at the beginning that these are actually almost kind of subconscious beliefs that we have based on the way that we were raised, things that we've seen in movies, on television, in the media, otherwise. So how do we recognize when a belief that we're holding is actually a myth and not reality? And then what do we do about that?
Yeah, I think the recognition of it is that I am now frustrated, and I am frustrated with you. So we got some of the dynamics, and if we know how myths work, we say, well, that's the way a myth works. What am I frustrated about? Well, you're not as much fun as you used to be. Okay, now is that you, or is it marriage itself and having kids and all that? So I need to think it's marriage itself, and then I think, well, where do we go from there? How do I, instead of blaming you, how do I get back in touch with you? And if you look back, the driver initially was the relationship. And what was the driver of the relationship before you had kids? The driver of the relationship was shared fun. And so, and this sounds almost ridiculous now, but so it's like, how do we get back the fun in our relationship? And it's interesting because people talk about date night, and all that. If you read about date night is one of the most mocked concepts, uh, because it seems so feeble to a lot of people. And I think it is feeble to a lot of people. So we got a big question here is, and the other problem is, do we both still want to get back the fun? Is it too late, or is it not too late? But I think the focus, the good news is, we need the fun. What's the fun going to be? And how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that with kids? And I don't mean having fun with kids. I think you need to have fun that is mom and dad together, no kids. uh,
Absolutely. So using a frustration as sort of a trigger to say, "Oh, wait, okay, I'm frustrated," and then questioning where that frustration is coming from. Is my frustration based in an actual action that you've taken or haven't taken, or is it based on a belief that I was holding about how this would be and it's not measuring up? And then from that point, kind of working together to move forward and maintaining a strong relationship between partners.
yeah, and strong means fun.
Excellent. I like that. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phelan.